Welcome back. This is still the BDTV Breakfast Show, and this is the paper review segment where we get to look at some of the stories making the front page of our dailies this morning. And I've got here in the studio Mohammed Akoji, our in-house analyst. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
It's always good to have you. How was my weekend? Was good. How was yours?
Very fine.
Awesome.
Manageable.
Manageable. Tell me more. Tell me. I'm interested.
I'm sure we had some discussion at behind the scene,
Yes,
but
yes.
I just say it was kind of manageable because it started off on a very wrong foot for me, but it ended well.
Okay.
I tried to be able to follow the German election, and the results there, showed the popularity of populism again. I'm sure you follow the German election. So the results, I think I watched that till around 1 a.m. this morning. The football was totally off the hook for me, and then it really hits me. It's troubles
and I think it hit everybody to a large extent.
Yes, Chelsea lost. Man
Arsenal.
City 2, Arsenal lost. Okay, that's my team. Because I put so much expectation on it, and then the title tilt is gradually opening up, and then but our attack actually looks quite blunt on that day. That's what I could see, and then immediately I started watching the game, I could see that there was no really that connection. But as I said, that one election tried to be able to put things in perspective for me, and then try to see what Olaf Scholz.
It's interesting how the German election.
I just have to be able to put my mind away from that, and then yes, because the European Union stands against US. You started to be able to see some directions as to the way it goes. So Olaf Scholz, the present German Chancellor, called for the snap election, which held between Saturday and yesterday, and then the result was actually called, and they lost their majority. They lost their majority seats. So likely we're going to have a new chancellor in Germany, and so it seems like it's quite a resounding notice that the people are not happy with their policies. So the conservatives have won now, and in fact one of the far right groups, called the ADF, Alternative for Democracy, came second, and the present party even took third. And the problem there is, so Alternative for Democracy is a far right group. They're amongst these anti-immigration groups, and then you'll see Trump effect as well, trying to be able to take shape. That's exactly where I'm going. The same way it nearly happened in France, Marine Le Pen, where we're seeing some of these, conservative, traditional institutions coming up again. Those are actually people to believe in all those. So the election preceded that when it happened in Germany yesterday, and Olaf Scholz has actually conceded that yes, they have not done enough, and they have to go back to the drawing board.
Interesting. So that actually puts things, just like you said, a little bit in perspective.
Really.
That's a good one. Let's see what we have on the front pages today of the papers. Let's start with the BusinessDay newspaper. This is the BusinessDay TV breakfast show, so it's a good way for us to start the day. So this is BusinessDay. On the front page of BusinessDay paper, we see the big story there. It says inside Nigeria's $20 billion yam industry. That's the story, the big story. And then we see another one on the left hand side. It says top left. It says investment starved Nigeria misses out on $3.7 billion metals boom. Talking about billions here and there. Again, we have another one on the bottom, in the middle rather. It says we have enough to meet Nigeria's petroleum needs, and this is according to Dangote, as Zambia seeks Dangote investment in energy sector. Interesting. Now moving on, and just still below, it says Zurel Oduwole, 22-year-old, brings honor to Nigeria with Nobel Peace Prize nomination. Big deal, if you ask me. I hope she goes on to win. But what do you know about this big story? What do you know about this big story inside
Before I go to the big story,
20 billion.
Before I go to the big story, can I talk about this Zuriel Oduwole? It's actually been generating, and I'm sure you would have actually been able to hear about it maybe on social media, because at least Zuriel Oduwole is a 22-year-old Nigerian who was actually born in the US to a Nigerian American father, and the grandparents are also American. And his advocacy on education and girls' rights, girl child right, have actually been at the forefront. And yesterday, when the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize nominees, the call started in January, and then the list came out yesterday, and then her name was there. She was born in Los Angeles, as I said, but it is quite remarkable Because if you look at, prodigious kids like that, Greta Thunberg, the Swedish prodigy, Malala Yousafzai from Pakistan, what some of these people have done, at those tender age, to be able to put themselves in the global space. So Zuriel is, you're seen as an education advocate, a filmmaker, and a youth diplomat who have actually been able to dedicate our life towards, advancing global education, access, and gender equality. And going down into the memory lane, going down because when I saw that yesterday, I got that through a friend who actually posted it, and I tried to be able to check about what she has done. And we've seen that she has actually even got involved in advocacy discussions with presidents of nations. Venezuela and Guyana, for example, there was a border dispute, and she was actually among the delegates who went there, even at the age of, I think it was at the age of 16 or 17, to be able to have a discussion with the Venezuelan and David Granger then at mediator, to a dispute between Venezuela and Guyana. He was also there during the time of Joe Biden, the Secretary of State. He was there to talk to U.S. Secretary of State, Sir John Kerry, for a kind of a reward-based educational program in the U.S. And these are some of the advocates that actually be able to push out there for the Nobel Peace Foundation to be able to consider for that Nobel Award, because I'm sure Nobel Peace Prize is something that is quite remarkable. And we've also seen how she has actually got herself involved in that. And that is a very remarkable thing for Nigeria to see, that we have somebody, we have Zuriel, shining that light on us again, through that direction. And Nigerians have clearly, be able to get involved, in actually throwing their weight and giving their support, and even asking questions as to, okay, how does the voting process go? Even though if she didn't win, you understand, for the fact that you have the nomination, it's a very big deal. We all know how prestigious and how valuable Nobel Prize. Let's even talk about the Nobel Peace Prize, how prestigious that be, and that's has actually allowed us to be able to shine a lot of quite considerable light, on Nigeria, and we really be able to wish her well and hope that she can actually be able to get there. Greta Thunberg, for example, this climate advocate, you heard about her, Greta. I'm sure she has been nominated for more than 8 times. She has not won. Yusuzai, who was actually
killed. Even just getting the nomination is a big deal.
That's a very, very big deal. That's exactly how she made, she actually be able to posit herself in that regard. Then going back to the other side of the story, before we go to, I think it was the Dangote story as well. Sorry about that. Before I go to the story, so the Zambian Minister of Energy was at Ibejuleki, the Lekki Free Trade Zone, on Saturday. Makozo Chikote, that is his name, and to pay a courtesy visit and to be able to collaborate to see how Dangote product, most of their refineries, petroleum product, diesel, jet one fuel, can actually be extended towards Zambia. And there were a lot of statistics that actually be able to come out, from Dangote, in terms of one, that they have their capacity to be able to meet all the local demands. Don't forget, it's about 250,000 barrels per day. That is the capacity of the refinery. And he made it known right there and then, as to the amount of fuel that they have in stock, worth about $600 billion, was actually what he claimed that they have. In addition to that, he mentioned something very critical as well, in terms of the oil that we consume locally.
Right.
You understand now, in terms of local consumption. I remember last week, I think we spoke about that last week. NUPRC said daily consumption is 50 million liters. And they believe, that's NUPRC, and that local production is not enough. And that is what informed importation, that you have to import from Belgium. I think we spoke about that last week. But Dangote and the vice chairman of the group as well, Mr. Hedwin, the Indian man there, realized the statistics that now they're even doing about 103 million liters, 104 million across petroleum products. I think 57 million for petrol. The
that's
list
a
of
lot.
them, yes, that's what it was actually there in the report. When you're able to see how much that he said he did, I tried to be able to put down the figures here, because I quoted him when he was talking about it, Mr. Hedwin, in terms of the capacity of in terms of having enough fuel to be able to meet the local demand. Maybe I should be able to point out, because for the purpose of our listeners at home, So this is what he mentioned. Good. So Davakumar Hedwin, that is his name, who was the VP of the Dangote Group. So he said that refinery, because of where it is actually located, is very close to the sea, and I'm sure you must have actually been able to visit it. I've been there once or twice. It's actually very close to where I live anyway, so you usually go there. So so he mentioned how the refinery can be able to meet all the local requirements. So analyzing, their production data, what they do. So he believed that in total, they believe they produce 104 million liters of different petroleum products daily. That's what they do, 104 million liters. Those 104 million liters comprise of 57 million liters of petrol, 20 million liters of jet fuel, that is aviation fuel, 37 million liters of diesel, and so the 57 million, they claim that 46 million is what we consume locally. So, which means that they still have more than enough to satisfy the local demand. So, and the rest of the 58 million liters. So, I'm talking about 46 million liters across board, not only petrol. Remember, petrol, diesel, Jet A1 fuel. The total that they said we consume is 48 million liters, which is not very far-fetched from what NUPRC said, the regulator, that we consume 50 million liters every day. So at least it's quite close. So the remaining 58 million liters, they exported. That's what they're saying. And that because we have limited number of aircraft, Jet A1 fuel is actually the least of them, because it's not really like the demand for that is not that much. So averagely, 20 million liters is actually what they claim. And even in Nigeria alone, it's just like 3 million liters of that that we actually be able to consume on a daily basis. So that puts a perspective, puts that into perspective, you understand, as to what they do. And that by March next year, the full production will actually be done. And then their sulfur content and other things. I think they are doing a whole lot. Remember the issue about, the diesel, their fuel is dirty, their fuel is that, in terms of parts per million.
Permit me just a little bit. Okay. So when they're saying that they have enough to meet Nigeria's petroleum needs, what Dangote is saying in essence is that they have enough, and in that light they can also meet Zambia's energy needs. Is that what they're saying? So I just want us to have that in perspective.
So as I said, the Minister of Energy for Zambia was there, and that was why some of these statistics came out. So they came on a courtesy call to ensure that for now they are not exporting to Zambia yet. They are still within West African region, and then some of them to Europe. So the Zambian man, if you look at what he said, Mr. Makozo Chikote. Thank you very much. So so the Zambian government is trying to be able to safeguard their own fuel supply, and the nation needs energy security. And one way of guaranteeing their energy security is through Dangote Refinery. They believe that Dangote's product will go a long way to make that happen for them. So because they're just signing the agreement, and that the Dangote company need to come on board so they said they look at Dangote company since they come on board for competitive fuel pricing and to ensure sufficient, reliable, and affordable petroleum product for Zambians. They are signing that bilateral agreement to ensure constant supply to Zambia. For now, they've not started supplying Zambia, as I said. But the remark as well was just to be able to refer back to NUPRC's statement last week that 50 million liters is the daily consumption need. And because we cannot be able to meet that, that is the reason why they are doing importation. Remember, that's the question they ask. Why are we still importing? When we have we have major refineries, we have the modular ones in the country. And they said we need to do that because the local players cannot meet the local demand. That was so. But in a reaction to that, in a strict reaction to that, was to say, on a daily basis, we do 104 million liters of different petroleum products. Of them, petrol alone is 57 million. That's we do. Then we do for diesel, we do for Jet A1 fuel, and then of even 104 million, the total local demand, according to them, for all these products in Nigeria is just 48 million liters. Not only fuel, Jet A1, and then diesel. So maybe the two of the regulators, and then we need to be able to tell us where the statistics and the production data are coming from. So the regulators are saying petrol products alone is 50 million daily. Dangote people, Edwin De Veteran, said the total consumption of hot product that we consume locally of the three major products, with the exception of kerosene, which are not really doing, is 48 million liters. So meaning that just fraction of the 48 million, larger portion of that 48 million liters go into petrol, then the others into Jet A1 fuel for planes, and then diesel. So that reconciliation needed to be done, between the NUPRC and the Dangote group. But as I said, some of these remarks came on the heels of the visitation by Mr. Chikoti, who was there and was trying to tell them about the need to have a bilateral agreement to ensure that Dangote Refinery can be supplied to Zambia to ensure sufficient energy security and constant supply of energy. So some of those things were there, and then they were also be able to mention, finally, Dangote himself said that about the quality of their fuel, and he laid down a very serious gauntlet on Saturday, it was actually on Saturday, sorry, to say that even at the moment now, because of their fuel, a lot of refineries in Europe are closing down for two reasons.
Why?
Okay, good. One, that was the quality of what they produce. Don't forget the quality. So they measure the quality of oil in terms of the sulfur content, the parts per million, and their parts per million is about 50. And they are saying by the time they get their catalytic converter next month fully, where they are producing 50,000 barrels every day, they should be able to have 0 parts per million. And then the other term there that I think you just should be able to use to justify what they do in terms of the sulfur content and in terms of, I think it was the nitrogen content or something, that you also be able to mention. So you mentioned that today we're doing about 150 parts per million ppm, that's in terms of the sulfur content. But now, we are doing 50, January was 150, now 50, and we are hoping that we are able to move up to 0 parts per million by then. I mean, that's so, there are certain things they mentioned there, because they can be able to do that. They can do winter diesel, we can do Hero 5, these are variants of oil. And then because of what they do finally, that has actually been able to lead to closure of refineries abroad in Europe. He didn't mention specifically, I mean, that's funny, and that 40% demand, that local fuel consumption in Nigeria, the local fuel consumption is just 40% of their production. Local fuel production. I mean, our local demand in Nigeria. So I'm sure it's a swift reaction to UPLC to say that we have enough locally, so there is still no need for importation. But don't forget that the case is in court. They took them to court at the time to ensure that they took Dangote took UPLC at the major marketers. The moments who are still like Total.
Yeah, but they will still need to import. It's a way to
ensure competition.
Yeah, boost competition and also the competency, because if they're not importing and we're just, I did hear from an analyst, an industry expert last week. He's in the energy sector, and he shed more light on that, Jide Pratt, and on why they would need to keep importing. So as much as we have all of the Dangote Refinery, producing a lot, and then we have Warri, Port Harcourt, which they're still there on the side. But he had mentioned how important it is for them to keep importing, so to maintain some sort of competitiveness and also just ensure the competency.
Even though Dangote disagree with that with you, the case is in court anyway, because they have disagreed. He has taken them to court and they are still fighting it. I think the case will come up in March. The case again was adjourned to March, but thereabouts, March 17 or thereabouts was actually when the case will be heard again, because they are taking the UPR's regulators and the major marketers to court to say we have enough locally. Is local content under Local Content Act. Why should you, or why should we? Like
I always say, let's just see how that pans out. But let's see what this big story here. What do you know about this story inside Nigeria's $20 billion yam industry?
Really,
what do you know about
this? I don't really have much information about that. But,
okay.
I think Mr. Odinaka and Ruth, did that story, and they told us about how important that's. In fact, importation there. I think there's a rider to that. Can you read the rider?
World's largest producer of crop products exported to United Kingdom, United States.
But the only thing I think we go to the Petrol here when we were discussing about that. Also we were discussing maybe about titanium, and then the discussion we had then was like, especially with Nigerians, they are now this Nigerian Export Promotion Council. That now enhance Nigerians to be able to export some of these local produce that we do. But look at that market itself. NEPC, Export Promotion Council, said that yam market alone is a $20 billion industry.
Yeah, and to read more on this story, you need to grab a copy of the BusinessDay newspaper. Deep insight, deep analysis, very informative. So grab a copy of the BusinessDay newspaper. Also, this one on the top left-hand side says, investment starved Nigeria misses out on $3.7 billion metals boom. What do you know about this?
Okay, I think the story there was because investors, our metal line, and that's what the solid minerals needed to be. We needed to really be able to check the the solid minerals, because that is another. Remember, some of these, just like you talk about the yarn industry, titanium, metal as well is another potential revenue spinner for the nation.
For Nigeria.
But investment has actually starved, for a while now in that space, owing to a lot of reasons. Insecurity has actually played a whole lot to scare away investors, and unfortunately, capital, as they say, is there's a very popular plant in finance term that capital is always very fearful, is always afraid. You only be able to focus more on capital is afraid. You always be able to look for where it's actually very quite peaceful, where it can actually be able to regenerate itself. And so insecurity plays a very, very large part in ensuring that is actually we're not getting enough in that space.
Right, let's see what we have on the Punch paper this morning. The big story on the Punch paper says APC PDP clash as El Rufai woos opposition parties, and this continues on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Punch newspaper, I must say that is quite heavy this morning. Ruling party berates Kaduna ex-governor for romancing PDP bigwigs others. All of this inter-party, or what do they call it again? Party activities or anti-party activities. Tax reform up on the Punch newspaper says tax reform. National Assembly engages caucus leaders as hearing begins. Again, on page 52, we have enough fuel to meet Nigerians' need. We already spoke about that. Page 8 says Babangida justifies $12.4 billion Gulf oil windfall mismanagement despite Okigbo report. I don't know if this is coming from his newly released book. I should read that book. I already have a copy. Then IG squads man secretariat as Oshun local government poll crisis rages. This continues on page 9 of the Punch newspaper. Stepfather friend arrested for impregnating 14-year-olds in Lagos. This is very tragic. Very tragic. Page 9 says Southwest governments lack power to stop lack power to stop Sharia panels, and this is according to Kwara judge. But I want you to very, very briefly, perhaps just speak on the big story, the APC PDP clash, and maybe you want to talk on the Southwest government's what you know about that story.
So quickly, the crisis, is deepening further, especially in APC, because I think there's a spotlight on APC now. Remember, El Rufai has incessantly come out to and then join, come out and trying to be able to close ranks, alignment and realignment in the north to ensure that they have a formidable opposition within the APC against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, perhaps in 2027. But two important events happened over the weekend, and that's is actually be able to send signals as to, because don't forget it's still in APC. So one was that it was actually in the entourage of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar when they pay condolence visits to Chief Edwin Clark in Delta, the Edwin Clark that died. And then a lot of people were actually reading meaning to that. El-Rufai was actually in the camp of Atiku. And he granted interviews, he granted interviews to the journalists to say there are a lot of misconceptions that people had about Atiku, especially about the economic trajectory of the nation. It was there that people have, misconstrued and misunderstood the ex-vice president, because most of the successes of economic policies that we see under President Obasanjo was actually beholden to Atiku. But I'm sure it can be because he was a minister under the administration. Remember, he was Minister of FCT during that time. So that could actually be able to give him the latitude to be able to express. But it made reference to telecommunication. That was the brainchild of Atiku. Some of the privatization that took place during President Obasanjo were actually as a result of his doing. That is one of the things, I said, where exactly are you? And then immediately after that on Saturday, we saw him as well meeting with the PDP in Kaduna State. Was there with the PDP chairman and the secretary. It was a closed door meeting. Journalists don't have a whiff of what was discussed, but an APC man being in a closed door meeting with the PDP, just like you said, that was tantamount to anti-party activities. So those two events, shaped what exactly is happening. But we know that he has consistently voiced out his opposition. APC has actually reacted. That he said, he was disgruntled because he was not considered, he couldn't get picked for the ministerial position. But don't forget that, yes, the president picked him. He was supposed to be a minister. In fact, the president told him, I don't want you to go anywhere. I wanted you in my cabinet. But he was actually disqualified on the basis of security risk at the Senate as a result of that. So APC Ajibola Bashiru, the APC National Secretary, we thought that to say that was actually the reason why he's engaging in all these actions, because he couldn't be able to get his way. He's disgruntled and frustrated, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. Whether it's the case, we'll be able to learn about that. 2, tax reforms. I don't know if we're able to have the time. Because I just have to be able to cut them short. So sorry about that.
Please go ahead,
yes,
very quickly.
Tax reform is going to start today. Caucus, I'm sure you've seen some support that we've seen. The Senate President, after the passage of, we actually expecting it last week, but it couldn't be able to fly because there were some, caucus meetings, especially the northern groups, the northern senators. The House of Rep have started their own debate on it, but Senate will kickstart their debate on the tax reforms. There have been some concessions, compromise have been reached between the committee led by Mr. Taiwo Edele, the governors who have been staunchly in opposition to the bill, and then the northern people. Remember, the northerners have actually been staunchly saying, no, this cannot fly. But there are some concessions that we've seen, and then debates, and then engagement and deliberations have started on it. Hopefully, we'll see how that will be able to fly as soon as possible. Then finally, was actually the Lagos State issue. The president, in fact, we heard, I don't know whether you read that.
Which of them? Lagos State Assembly and Tinubu engaging Akonde.
The crisis reached a tilt last week. In fact, I think we reported it before. There was a news that flew. There was a letter that was flowing out last week that Madam Miranda, because I know we discussed about that, that she has resigned. The letter was actually dated 17th of. Remember last week the shenanigans and the program that happened at the complex last week. So the letter came out on Wednesday that she has resigned. Based on little credence to what people have been talking about, that I will resign and I'll go back to a floor member. She denied it. But today, if you look at what he said there, that maybe she might likely be able to tender as a resignation today. Don't forget the House is still the House has actually been adjourned indefinitely. They've actually been able to prorogue the House indefinitely. But the report came out today that the president has actually asked Baba Konde and some other APC bigwig to, intervene in the affair and see whether this man will likely be able to come back or not. But I know there are a lot of the papers are packed full.
Yeah, I wanted us to speak on this Southwest
government as well. Thank you very much.
Too.
So it was just one of the choir judge who was interpreting the rule of Nigeria. I think we've discussed about this to say the rule of that Sharia panel is well codified in the Nigerian constitution, and that's exactly the angle he's coming from. So it's not the powers of. So doing that will actually be doing something that is contrary to the provision of the law of the land, and that's exactly what the choir judge was actually talking about.
All right. The Vanguard newspaper this morning says, still on the war, it says APC Makinde war over Osun local government polls, petroleum industry discourse. This is from a meeting. Then on the top left hand side, it says 1966 coup. IBB has vindicated Igbo. Owaneze, Chekwas Okore have this to say, and this is all coming from the inaugural launch of the book. Ganduje Minister Bika over Kano APC chairmanship. Again, IBB still it's been in the headlines since that.
Whether it's a marketing strategy.
Was it Thursday that this happened?
It's
just been in the news, like every headline. It's just been, there are conversations about
that.
But
it's about 445 pages. I read it over the weekend.
You already read it. Oh, nice.
You will see a whole lot of. There are a lot of exposés.
Why I introduce SAP and other policies again, IBB. Then why Nigeria state of the nation? Why Nigerians are angry. This is from Ango Abdullah. It says, whether military or civilian regime, good governance is key. We don't need new state. And I think this is also coming from the background of, the Senate, some people, some lawmakers trying to ask for more states. I think they are talking about maybe like 31 additional states to make it 67 states, which for me is a reach. But again, this one says Cardoso meets Saudi Arabian ambassador. It'll be interesting to know what the outcomes of that meeting are. Then we have 600 billion naira worth of petrol in storage, and this is from Dangote. Oh well, that's what we have on the front page of the Vanguard this morning. Let's see very quickly what we have for the cartoon of the day for Business Day Business Day's cartoon of the day is always a very good way for us to end the newspaper review.
So
we
it's still
have
that big Johnny in service.
interestingly.
He's really getting in our faces.
So then you see
Your
him
friends have
sitting,
journeyed.
and then you see somebody. What's going on? You
Like
see
a
him
deaf-
seated on a chair,
Yeah,
like
that's him
he's
seated
on
on
a
a chair.
wheelchair,
And those are
and
past
then and
presidents.
that's also somebody at his back, maybe like the person that guide.
Is this like a guy? No, that's deaf.
Is it deaf?
That looks like a deaf with his hat that he wielded. Maybe saying you're almost closer to your grave. Abi?
Really? Is that it?
That looks like that looks like a security person. That looks like
really?
a death hovering around his head, you know.
Really?
The man is something,
so it
it's
says
understandable.
your friends have journeyed in service to wash you clean.
To wash you clean.
So then, who are all these people in his front?
I see
Atiku Abubakar, I see Olusegun Obasanjo, I see Dangote. It's not just
Dangote
past president. I see President Bola Tinubu, Osibajo,
that is Jonathan.
Goodluck Jonathan.
And you have a lot of other people that were present there at the lunch.
That launch was star-studded. Now there are different perspectives to it. When I say star-studded, stars in the political
of course, I know what you're talking about.
There are people that are saying like, was it deserving? You know, I don't. Let me leave the conversation. But it's very interesting. So that's death.
Hovering around his head, I can see that, and maybe the friend that watch him clean, you see what all of them said. I mean, just a testament.
Yeah, but then
what they said about, you have actually been able to make good.
And they have, they have painting brushes. Have you seen that?
Of course, that's to paint him clean, to wash him clean. You know, especially the June 12th. Is it June 12th to say, since you have actually come out to acknowledge and acceded that this is what really happened, go and say no more.
So the paint brushes
is just to brush him clean of all those stains, all those stains that he has had, you know, as a fallout of what he has done. So the paintbrush is just to say you are now clean. You can
go
be
and
able
see
to
no,
maybe go and see no more, or meet God in
no more. Okay, that's good. On that note, let's also go and see no more. But thank you so much, Mohammed Akonji, for your time.
Thank you very much for
on the morning show this month. It's always a delight. And that was it with the newspaper review for the front pages of the dailies this morning. Do stay with us for more.